I've long been looking for someone to make the intellectual case against Donald Trump because I'm interested in hearing the other side and engaging with ideas, and yet I haven't been able to find it. The only people I find that are opposed are usually just low-information voters that are ill-informed, or people that tend to cite one of these media hoaxes. There's the Russia collusion hoax is probably the biggest one, but there's the very fine people hoax, or the all immigrants are XYZ hoax. It's like you can go back through the tunnel of time. There's more than I can even remember at this point. But generally when someone is like, I can't stand him because he said this, and come to find out it's one of these hoaxes that are easily debunked, by the way. If you just look into the full context of the story, because that's what the media likes. They like their little soundbite. They like their little section they can cut out and then amplify that. You remove all the context, and you can make anybody look like a madman. And so we have the next great media narrative hoax here, and I think you can see why it was chosen. Trump. Americans who died in war are losers and suckers. Now, this, of course, is designed to strip away much-needed military votes. And I am sure that when you talk to your liberal friends, they're going to bring up this very line. Well, he did call people in the military suckers and losers. Okay, in the era of fake news, you have some responsibilities, and one of them is to get greater context. I want to look at this article and see, first of all, something you should get in the habit of doing is always look at who wrote an article and what else have they written. In this case, you can see it was written by a guy named Jeffrey Goldberg. And so you should ask yourself, well, let's do a little research into Jeffrey Goldberg. And you could see, here he is on MSNBC, and he's defending this article. I really want you to get a sense of just how awful this person is.
But joining us now, Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic and the author of the article that's making all the headlines today concerning the president's comments about John McCain and other fallen American veterans and service members. Jeff, you've heard what the president said in calling it a fake, disputing it vigorously. Can you tell us your reaction to the president's reaction?
It is not fake. It is real.
Oh, is it?
The story is extensively sourced and entirely accurate. That's all I can say.
Accurate.
This is not the first time, of course. It's probably not the first time today that the president has cast aspersions on journalism that doesn't reflect well on him. So his reaction is completely predictable. It's also, you're right, that it's very vigorous. And I think that these vigorous denials are motivated by a realization. I think you were talking about this earlier in your show. A realization that these kinds of comments that he's made really don't reflect well on him among a certain type of voter he actually needs very much in a couple of months.
Wow, what a coincidence. A voter he needs, and it just happens to come out. It's almost like it's complete BS. So let's look at a little more into that guy we just watched, Jeffrey Goldberg. You can see here on his shame profile, for 2 decades now, Jeffrey Goldberg, the guy we just watched, has peddled blatantly false war propaganda. What did I tell you? A vote for Democrats is a vote for war, with disastrous consequences. He has fronted for the military-industrial machine and played a key PR role pushing America into the war with Iraq. And he's been rewarded for his lies and failures with a top editor's job at The Atlantic Monthly. For being wrong, for lying, for starting wars, he got put in one of the most prestigious positions in newsrooms around America, and you still believe the media when they tell you climate change is real. They lie about war. You don't think they're going to lie about a house sliding into the ocean? Let's look at the recovered history from Jeffrey Goldberg. In the early 1990s, that guy we just watched served as a prison guard at the, I can't even say it, Kiziot, Israel's largest detention camp for Palestinian political prisoners. In an interview, Goldberg describes his prison guard duty as not an entirely negative experience, and hopelessly exotic for me. The prison has long been criticized for its inhumane conditions, including frequent beatings, lack of drinking water, and forced labor. Among the hundreds of books forbidden to prisoners at Kaziat have been The Lord of the Rings. Apparently they don't want a strong Christian writer. I don't know. And Hamlet. In his own 2006 book, Prisoners, Goldberg described a scene from Kaziat in which his friend repeatedly hit a Palestinian prisoner in the head with a heavy, sharp-edged army radio, beating him to a bloody pulp, a beating that Goldberg deduced was prompted by something the prisoner had said. Goldberg admits he lied to cover up the crime. I found another military policeman and handed off the wobbling prisoner who was by now bleeding on me. He fell. I lied. He fell. Goldberg himself also admitted he took part in beating Palestinian prisoners, but justified it by saying, I never hit a Palestinian who wasn't already hitting me. Yeah, I'm sure you were the paragon of justice, Goldberg. Later in 2012, he denied he was ever a prisoner guard. He says, my actual title was prisoner counselor. Hey, let's defund the police and the prisons and just put a bunch of counselors like Goldberg in. It can get worse. Can this guy get even scummier? Well, yes, he can. After 9/11, Goldberg became one of the leading journalists responsible for propaganda that drummed up unfounded terrorist fears in order to scare the public into war with Iraq. Goldberg was one of the key Bush administration media assets used to manufacture non-existent links between Saddam Hussein and al-Qaeda. In 2002, Goldberg published a New Yorker article titled The Great Terror that connected al-Qaeda to Saddam Hussein through an extremely unreliable source, a jailed drug dealer provided by Kurdish intelligence. The London Observer interviewed this same prisoner and determined that he was a liar and his story was simply not true, but that didn't stop Dick Cheney, who twice waved around that prisoner's story in Jeffrey Goldberg's piece on Sunday talk shows in late 2002 in order to sell the invasion to the American people. The Great Terror won Overseas Press Club's award for Best International Reporting in a Print Medium dealing with human rights. Oh, yeah, he's so good at that. And was praised by former CIA director and active neocon James Woolsey, who called the story a, quote, blockbuster. Woolsey was also heavily cited in the article, and some have speculated that he helped with the research. You can see here, Jeffrey Goldberg even took credit with no shame. Yes, I know. I started the Iraq War. He was also one of the first journalists to jump on the Russia, Trump colluded with Russia narrative hoax. Oh no, Putin has hacked our democracy, even though we live in a constitutional republic, and by calling it a democracy, you conveniently eliminate the word constitution. And a YouTuber here that goes by the name of Mr. Obvious, I recommend you subscribe to him if you haven't. He's done a video that shows how this very line, Americans who died are losers and suckers. It's not a direct quote, but it's a line that comes out at the end of The Godfather 2. He's literally taking movie quotes from bad guys' mouths and putting them in the president's mouth to peel away military votes from the president. That's how little regard and little respect this Jeffrey Goldberg has for everyone, and it just is so rich to watch him get on there and talk about how the president is of low moral character. You've got to be kidding me. These are the people that are pushing these fake news narrative hoaxes. The news isn't just a little fake, or it's not just slanted or embellished. No, it's completely made up from nothing. It's made up. It's Hollywood. They are creating a supervillain. You know, what's next? What villain next is Trump going to literally quote? And as I pointed out, a vote for Biden's a vote for war. Now, we've talked a lot about Iraq here. Well, the majority, at least a large percentage of the former Bush administration is backing Joe Biden. Over 100 plus Former John McCain staffers, John McCain, who never saw a war he didn't like, have also endorsed Biden. Colin Powell, the guy who stood in front of the United Nations and said, "We know Iraq has WMDs," got us into 2 forever wars, has endorsed Joe Biden. Hillary Clinton, who the Green Party has referred to as the goddess of war. You know, if she was in office, we would be at war with Syria right now. You know it. Hillary Clinton has endorsed Joe Biden. Joe Biden doesn't even know who Joe Biden is anymore, and yet he's got every major neocon and warmonger and globalist backing him. And every time Trump tries to draw down troops, every time Trump tries to end wars or get us out of certain places, like why are we still in Germany, both parties oppose him. And the fake news media has their back because they are the enemy of the people. They're going to keep making up narrative hoaxes just like this and amplifying them across the internet. They're going to take words from God knows who next, stuff them into Donald Trump's mouth, all pretend like it's real, and then you're going to work with people or talk to people that believe it. Well, at least when it comes to the losers and suckers hoax, you can show them this video.